Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikens. In a previous video I showed you how to create a modal pop-up using another view controller. This is a continuation, but in this video I'll show you how to create a modal pop-up within the same view controller that is opening it. Let's get started. Okay, let's delete that segue. So now this button will not open up this pop-up. Now let's just copy this pop-up over to the main view here. And we'll stick it just right here, should be fine. Whoa. Actually, we want it not there. We want it inside the main view. There we go. It lost its constraints, so let's add those back. Let's see. We had it centered horizontally and vertically. Okay, looks good. Now from here, we can just delete this view. We don't need this anymore. Okay. So this is going to be a little bit different. When I click this button, I can't like right click and say, okay, yeah, show this. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some code here to show this view. So we need an outlet. Let's clean this up first here. Okay, and we want, whoops, and let's right click it again and change it to action. Show pop-up. Okay, good. Here's how we're going to do this. What I'm going to do is this view right here has a center X constraint. And so what I'll do is I'll take this pop-up, this view, and I'm going to just move it off the screen. And then when they click this button, I'm going to move the pop-up back onto the screen. And I'm going to do that using this view right here. So right now it's set to 0, but if I change that to negative, let's say 300, it's going to move it over here, so it's off the screen. So when I click this button, I'm actually going to change this constant back to 0, like this, so it comes back onto the screen. I'm going to have it slide into the screen, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's start off with setting it to 300 so it's off the screen. And we'll also need an outlet for this constraint because we need to change that constant property. So let's just drag this constraint over here. And we'll just call that the center pop-up constraint. There we go. When I click this button, I'm going to set that constraint to 0. Just like that. And let's see how that looks. All right, good. But you notice when that, we didn't implement the continue button here. But notice, like when it popped into view, it just kind of just popped in really suddenly. What I want to do is I want to have it slide into view. So we're going to create an animation for that. And we'll do that down here. UI view animate. And we'll just have it slide in with the duration of 0.3 seconds. So that means from where it is now to its destination, it'll take 0.3 seconds. Now, I said this in earlier videos too. When you animate a view where you're changing the constraint, you can't actually animate this constant. Because if you command click in here, you'll notice it in the comments, it doesn't say animatable. And anything that's animatable will have, in the comments, it'll say animatable, and this does not. So what we can animate instead is the laying out of the view. So if you do view, and if you say call this function layout if needed, what it does is it says lays out the subviews immediately. So you've set the constant, so that means it's going to change. And then by calling this function, it will then actually perform the layout changes. And that's what we're actually going to animate. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, much better. See it slide in. It was kind of slow, right? And let's implement this continue button, because instead of rerunning the application, if I want to see it multiple times, I just want to click continue and then get rid of this pop-up. Okay, I can't see it right now, but what I can do is just go to the document outline, find the continue button, and then just drag it and implement an action. So let's change that to action, and we'll say close pop-up. And closing it this time will be a little bit different, because when I close it, I actually want to animate it back off the screen. So it'll be similar to this code, except instead of changing it to 0, I'm going to change it to -300. And then it'll animate it out. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit, so when you click dismiss, it goes away fast. Okay, also, what we did in the last example, we rounded the corners, so let's do that again. Let's add those rounded corners. And we'll just do that real quick here. Okay, this will be our pop-up view. And do you guys remember how to do this? You want to access the layer. Oops, layer. And then you want to change the corner radius. And we gave it a 10 last time. Then there was something else we did too. Do you remember what we did last time? We had to tell it that we want that shape to affect all the subviews, all the views within that layer. Or within that view, rather. So we want to mask to bounds, and we want to set that to true. Okay, so we have our rounded corners there. Another thing you also noticed is when, let's run it and let me show you something. Okay, it looks good. Notice it comes in and it actually goes away faster when I click it. So that's fine. Now again, on this pop-up view, notice it kind of blends into your view, right? So you want to separate that a little bit. And what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. I'm going to implement the same thing. I'm going to use a white color and change the alpha value so you can still see through it a little bit. But what I want to do is when I click this view, I also want that to dismiss the pop-up. You know, I can click continue and go on to something else, but if I accidentally click on this button and I want to get rid of it, I'm not going to put an X up here. The user can just click off the modal pop-up and get rid of it that way. So here's how I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do is add a button to my view, and I want to make that the same size as the window. I'll delete the text. And for this view, I want it to be the same size as this window. So I'll just add some constraints to the parent view. And holding down the command button, I'll add the leading, the trailing, and the vertical for the top and the vertical for the bottom. And that will make it the same size. Hit enter, and it should add those 4 constraints there. Now, in order to manipulate this button, I'll have to create an outlet for it. And we'll call this the background button. Okay, and when I click this button, I also want to dismiss the pop-up. I want to close the pop-up. Okay, so what I did is I added a button to the view here, and what I want to do is when I touch that button, I want to hide the modal pop-up, which we already have code for right here. So what I want to do is I just want to reuse the same code for both buttons. The button on the pop-up itself that says continue, and when I click this background here. So it would seem like you could be able to just drag this action and just connect it to the button, but you can't do it that way. I wish you could. Instead, what you can do is you can right-click. This is one way you can do it. Find your close pop-up action right here, and then grab it from here and then drag it to your button, and that will connect it. And here we'll just keep it the same one, touch up inside, which is right here. Okay, good. Now you can see this close pop-up function will be called when you touch either of these two buttons, the continue button or the background. Okay, there's another step you have to take. this kind of presents another problem because this button is on top of your UI. So while this button is on top of your UI, it won't let you click anything underneath it. So how do we fix this? Well, here's one trick. If you change the alpha of an object to 0, then it's considered hidden and you can click through it. So we're just going to do that. And remember, we also wanted this button to be to have a whitish color too, to help differentiate the pop-up from the background view. So let's change that as well. Okay, select the button, and let's change the view. You want to go down to the view part here. And so let's change this to white. There we go. And we'll change the alpha. I think we had it 50% on the other one. So let's just keep it at 50% right here. That looks good. So when the pop-up's on top of it, that looks fine. Now that's the state we want it in when we show the pop-up, right? So let's do that. In our pop-up, and we can even animate it too, I guess. We can just put it right here. Background button. And we want to change the alpha to 0.5. All right, good. And when we close it, we want to change it back to 0. So let's copy that, put it in this animation, and we'll change it to 0. Okay, good. Okay, so when we first come into the application, we actually don't want to show this button, right? So let's reset the alpha, not reset it, but let's change it to 0. So this will be its initial state. So now when I come in here and I click this button, whoa, that's not right. I think what might be happening is the button is on top of the modal pop-up. So let's change the order there. Okay, here's my background, here's my pop-up, yeah. So what we want to do is we want to put the pop-up behind, or I'm sorry, we want to put the background behind the pop-up, just like that. There you go. And now if the user clicks on this background, it'll dismiss the pop-up as well. Or they can click continue. Okay, I showed you two different ways to show a pop-up. One using a separate view controller, and another one where the pop-up is actually part of the same view controller and we're just sliding it in and out. If you want to see an additional tip, I like this animation, but what if we gave it some bounce? So stick around if you want to learn how to do that too. All I'm going to do is just change this animation right here. Let's create some more room for ourselves. And let's see. Okay, this is the animation I'm going to change right here. We'll keep that code up there as a reference. I'm going to delete it afterwards. Now this time, we're going to choose a different overload here for the animate. And we want to give it some spring. So we're going to use this one right here. And I'll tell you about this function as we go through it. So for the duration, it's the same as the one above. So for the duration, let's keep it the same. And actually, you know what? Let's speed it up a little bit because the other one we found was kind of slow sliding in. So let's change it to 0.2, speed it up. Delay, that's how long do you want to wait before the animation actually happens. We don't want any delay, so we'll just change that to 0. Okay, good. So using spring with damping. What does that mean? Well, damping is sort of like suppressing how much spring the animation has. What I mean by spring is kind of like bounce. It's going to make your view that you're animating bounce around. So damping is how much you're suppressing that. 1 would be completely suppressing the bounce. So it'll just slide into place and stop. And 0 would be having no damping at all. So we don't want it to have bounce all over the screen. So let's change this to, let's start with 0.5 and see how that looks. And then we can change it after. Initial spring velocity, that's how fast you want the initial animation to happen. Using 1, it'll start off really fast. Using 0 is normal. Apple says, if you look at their documentation, it says you'll typically want to pass 0 for the velocity. And remember, we're going to do just that. We're going to pass 0. Okay, animation options. You have a bunch of different options as far as like controlling the animation and how fast it starts. how fast it ends. They have these different options called ease in, ease out, and basically in applies to the start of the animation. So let me just show you right here. So if we say dot curve ease in, that means that, again, the in applies to the beginning of the animation, so it's going to ease into the animation. It'll start slow and then speed up and then stop at the end. If you do ease out, out replies to the end of the animation, so it'll start fast and then it'll slow down until it eventually comes to a stop. So it's easing out at the end. It's going to slow down till the end. For this example, we're just going to we'll have it ease out, so we'll have it slow down toward the end, when it bounces. Okay, and this is our actual animation. We'll go right here. Completion. I don't have any code that I need to run after the animation ends, so we'll just keep that as nil. All right, so let's take this and put it in here. And we don't need this code anymore, so let's get rid of that. Clean this up. Actually, you know what? Okay, putting this in here is going to look kind of weird because it's going to bounce the background. So the background button, it's going to bounce it around. So we don't want that. Instead, what we'll do is let's take that out of there, and we'll put that in its own animation. Just like we have here. We'll just use the same animation right here. And we'll make it the same duration. And we'll change that to 1. So basically what's going to happen is while this is springing into view, the background will come into view over 0.2 seconds as well. All right, let's see what this looks like. There we go. Oh, you know what? It has a white background because I changed the opacity to 1, right? So or the alpha to 1. So let's change that. It was 0.5 before, right? Okay, good. And did you see the spring? Let's take a look at that again. See how it bounces? If you want, we can dampen that just a little bit more. Give it a little bit less bounce. So if we want to dampen it, we just increase this number right here. And that dampens the bounce. So let's see how that bounce looks, or that spring looks. There we go. A little bit less bounce. All right, great. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly had fun putting it together. If you have any questions or comments, or if you know of any tips that pertain to this tutorial, please leave them in the comments. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing. Thank you for your time.